There's something going on in our communities right now related to the pandemic restrictions that I think is really sad. I think it's really tragic. I heard through the playground gossip that there was one mom who was saying, she was talking about, are you taking your kids trick-or-treating or not? In Ontario, where in many districts, Doug Ford is saying, it's not safe. Don't do the trick-or-treating. I don't buy that at all. But it's been interesting to hear people talk about how they're planning to navigate it. And this mom was saying that she thought, yeah, I'm taking my kids out. It's no big deal. And then the houses that are handing the candy out, well, we'll get the candy there. The ones that the lights are off, we won't do it. We won't knock on the door, just like usual. But some people on her street were saying, well, we're going to be looking out for people going trick-or-treating, and then we're going to be whatever, pointing at them, naming and shaming, telling them, go away, go back inside, and so forth. And you think, how sad, how awful that is happening in our communities right now. Sort of the erosion of civility and a strong sense of civic togetherness. And that's what the pandemic has brought now that we're at the point where we're dealing with restrictions that don't make sense. Back in the spring, it was hashtag we're all in this together. And you remember people went out to bang the pots and pans at a set time to acknowledge the greater challenges that nurses and healthcare workers were facing. Now, they're not doing that anymore. Instead, people are really at each other over this. You hear about all these encounters where in a grocery store, someone's not wearing a mask, so you got to chase them down and video record them and yell at them and so forth. Look, I follow the rules. They're not that onerous. I wear the mask. But if I see someone not wearing it, it's, oh, well, who is this criminal? We got to call the cops and hold them down until they get there. Actually, some troubling stories in Australia about that pretty much happening, forcibly placing masks on people, law enforcement doing it, wild stuff. And this all sows so much distrust with our neighbors. These rules, he's not following those rules. Okay, we gotta call in the law on him. And this also sense that if you had a neighbor returning from being abroad and there's the 14-day quarantine, well, maybe you want to keep an eye on them. And if you see them leaving the house, you could call the cops on them and they could get fined and so forth. What sort of world are we living in? I had a person remark to me a few weeks ago. They grew up in a Soviet state and they are very glad to be living in North America, living in Canada right now. And they said that they're kind of feeling a little stressed out because the things that are happening right now remind them of what it was like to live in that Soviet satellite country. They do not like it one bit. And this whole looking at your neighbor askance, judging them, being, unsure what to make of their movements. Can you trust them? Did they trust you? Are they going to call the cops on you? Should you call the cops on them for these very minor transgressions? Look, the thing we're learning about the virus right now is more facts and evidence, and finally the government is showing their data. It suggests that it's spreading by indoor gatherings for prolonged periods of time when you're not wearing the masks, you're coming close together and so forth. So let's certainly avoid all of those, and we have the protocols, the restrictions for all of that. But this stuff about kind of policing each other's movements during Halloween, or whether or not you're walking down the right way in the grocery aisle, and it leads to fisticuffs. It's just so sad that we're seeing that we're actually having to do this to each other, to our communities right now. And I think it's all the more reason why we need to pause and reassess all these different rules as frequently as possible to say, do we really need to be doing all of this? Did we really need to say, Halloween's not safe, ban trick-or-treating? I don't know. Because a lot of the tensions out there that we're seeing in society, we got to ask ourselves, is it worth it?